Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia video. Today we're going to do a character guide on Kefka. So for those of you unfamiliar with Kefka, Kefka is a big time debuffing character and a lot of his kit revolves around debuffing. I would say the big fault that Kefka has always had is that he takes up a lot of debuff slots. So you have to be very careful about running him with other debuffers and how you use them. Now his debuffs, you know, they start off non-framed, so when they're not framed, they're very easy to overwrite. But you just got to make sure that you get your important debuffs on before you start, because he has the ability to frame his own. And then once you frame them, those slots are just kind of eaten up, right? So just keep that in mind. We'll kind of see that in this video. So what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about Kefka's artifacts, his spheres, and his calls. So let's go ahead and start with the calls. So his 15 CP call is called Light of Judgment. Doesn't really do any color effects, it just applies some basic debuffs on the enemy. So attack down, defense down, speed down. Not the craziest, it can be useful in a fight where like enemies have to have debuffs on to like stop them from doing nasty things. There have been some fights like that. The LD is called Hyperdrive. Basically this is going to give the caller brave damage and overflow up, and then brave damage, or brave regen. So pretty basic, like nothing too crazy though, right? This isn't a call that I would carry a lot or use a lot, but it's something there. I think the main thing is if you just need debuffs filled up for whatever reason. Let's take a look at Kefka himself here. So his artifacts, you pretty much want attack 108 in the C50, which is power of destruction boost, which is going to add an extra max brave and attack. You could just do attack 108 max brave 330 as a decent substitute as well. But he's pretty much a debuffing slash damage dealing type character, right? Alright, and let's go ahead and hop into the spheres. He's got triple E slots, and E slots are the debuff slots. So obviously they're clearly yelling at you, this guy is a debuffer, right? Now Kefka's own, I would say, is pretty premium on him. A big fat magic attack up when you inflict a debuff. Very good sphere. So I'm definitely saving my Kefka EXs. I'm going to make some more of those later on, but that's a very good one. Seymour is always a good premium E sphere. Once again, just another attack up, so I'm just giving him a lot of attack ups there. The other thing you can do is you could do one of these aura debuffs. Now the big thing with Kefka, don't put on any that are actually putting on an actual debuff, because you're already fighting for debuff slots and he's already doing so much debuffing. So what you want to do is pick one of these aura ones. So the ones that come from an aura are like Ferris, Fujin, and Reno. Those are pretty decent ones you can do, right? And even though these auras overlap with debuffs he's already doing, the aura and the debuff will work together and like basically debuff more, which is pretty good. So for example, Kefka, I believe one of his effects does a Brave Sap. Well, this poison will be on top of the Brave Sap that we're getting from Ferris. So I think putting Ferris on there is actually pretty decent, right? Alright, but you can kind of pick based on what your E options are. But if you want to go full attack, you could just pick Yuffie, Seymour, Emperor, his own, right? And those are all just going to be big time attack ones that you can put there. So my Kefka, by the way, not super heavily invested. I've got the BT, but the BT isn't plus. I do have the Lufenia armor, but that's not plus. I've only got him Force Enhanced 10. So this is kind of like a bare minimum fully built Kefka. So just know the numbers will look better if you invest into more. That being said, I really don't recommend people summon here for Kefka. But he's a solid character. So let's go ahead and hop in and kind of explain how he works. The big thing with Kefka, let's see, do I need extra force charging? Not really. I mean, I'll bring a selfie just in case, but I don't think I need it. Between Rem and Luna Freya, we got plenty of force charging here, right? The big thing with Kefka that always made him busted in the past is he has a very important HP attack disable debuff. That's very, very good, right? So let's go ahead and start with him here. First I'm just, oh shoot, I'm actually, well that's fine. I was going to say, a Minitelian isn't a good thing to use because you're putting a ton of debuffs on. Oh yeah, and those are all frames, so oh well, that's fine. I'll explain the debuffs, but we're going to fill up these debuff slots really fast. So normally with Kefka, you might want to start off with Light of Judgment because you do want debuffs on, because his kit operates better the more debuffs that are on the enemy. Okay, and we'll talk about that. So not crazy damage, but you can see we just completely filled up the enemy now. They're full of debuffs. They've got all 8, right? So what Light of Judgment does, this is kind of like his spammable move that you can just use a lot. And basically his 15 and his 35 both have plus versions, which are basically always going to be up. Because the plus versions, basically you just have to be attacking a debuffed enemy, which they're always going to be debuffed, right? Unless, and you shouldn't be using Kefka in fights where you can't debuff. So as long as you're using them where it's appropriate, you're pretty much always going to have the plus versions, right? So Light of Judgment did give Kefka an attack up, and then it put an attack down, defense down, and speed down on the enemies, but you can see they are not framed. So we could overwrite those with other ones depending. I'm going to go ahead and throw a quick prayer down on Kefka. We are going to force charge a bit here. And actually, what I might do... Well, I guess I don't need the force charge because I don't have a force time to show off. So yeah, that's fine. We don't have to worry about force time. What am I talking about? Let's do the LD though. Get Kefka some heavy prayer. And actually, what I probably can just do... I probably didn't even need Lunafreya. I can probably just take a stroll through his BT phase and we'll have the whole kit explained, right? So that's maybe what I'll do. Let's just go... I guess... The player in me just has to take the free energy heal if I get it, right? Just gotta take it. Alright, let's go ahead and Frigid Fubuki here. Oh, wow, how did Lunafreya get... Oh, yeah, she gets all the turns because she's in her LD, right? She's got Quick Prayer on. Alright, we'll Diamond Dust. Now, Diamond Dust should put an Ice in peril, and it should overlap one of the Kefka debuffs, right? Yep, so we took off one of the Kefka ones, which is fine. Like, his are pretty generic. Once again, you just have to think about your team comp if you're going to do that. Alright, so we'll swap turns into Kefka. Alright, perfect. And then I guess what we'll do is we'll just do 2 attacks and then maybe go into burst phase. Well, let's just go into burst phase right away because we got to show it all off, right? Yeah, let's just go ahead and do that. Let's go into burst phase. We can do the AA, I guess, since it's free. So basically, this AA just makes you do more damage to debuffed enemies, essentially, is what it does, right? Alright, let's go ahead and do the burst. And then we'll kind of just explain the rest of the kit. What I am going to do, though, is I'm going to pop Trine. Trine here is kind of like his go-to. You don't get a ton of skill uses of it, but this is like one of his best buttons. It puts a blind and an HP attack disable for 2 turns, right? Which is really, really good. So you usually want to have Trine down because that just locks the enemies down. Then say you could use Hyperdrive, which is the LD. So let's pop that. Okay. Perfect. So here's what just happened. So when we use Trine, it does a Brave Gain attack, does HP attack disable and blind on the enemies, right? And so we can look at the enemies here, and we should have them. Did they get overwritten? Where did they go? I thought we just had them. All right, so something overwrote them. But well, let's look at the LD. So maybe the LD put some different debuffs on. Oh, it did, yeah. So here's what happens. This is kind of a bummer. So this is why you don't want to have the buffs so full. So what Hyperdrive does is it extends all of his self-inflicted buffs, debuffs by 1 turn, and then it frames them, okay? And then it does weakness damage to debuff targets, and then you get a free ability use on the next turn. He gets a buff called Dancing Mad, and basically what this does, and he has this from the quest start, he gets Brave Regen, he gets Overflow stolen up, he gets Brave damage up, he gets HP damage up 5% per debuff on the enemy up to 40. So basically, these enemies are going to have 40% HP damage up. That's very good. Like, that's a very powerful HP damage up increase. So I'd say that's one of the more powerful things Kefka is doing. That and the HP attack disable. Now, here's why my HP attack disable didn't stick. They were unframed, and then when I did the LD, it re-put on the generic debuff. So it has the attack down, the defense down, and the speed down, and then it framed them. So had we not been full of debuffs from a Miditelian, we would have kept that HP attack disabled, and then with the LD effect up, if I use Trine again, it would actually frame it and it would get stuck. So that's what you want to do, is you normally want to get Trine framed. We can go ahead and do the EX here and kind of see how much damage we get out of this. Okay, so we did like about 800k AoE, not the craziest, but once again, this isn't a fully maxed Kefka, right? So on the EX, basically what this does is it basically instant breaks, which is awesome, does weakness damage to debuff targets, and then extends all of his own buffs by 2 turns. So that's pretty good, right? And it's a good attack, it's a good button to press. Now what happens is we get an attack called Meteor Plus. Now this comes from using the LD, and with his rework, this is quite a bit better. This used to be not a great button to press. Let's see how much damage it does here. It has a lot of dumps. Oh yeah, that's about 1 mil damage. That's pretty good for the Meteor. And you can see it goes away. So you get 1 of those with each LD press. So you really want to save those like when you have like a force time, like really grind it up, right? Okay. And then let's go ahead and we will just do the burst attack, which is called Forsaken. This burst attack is once again, this is going to be very weak because I don't have it greened. If you green it, it does a lot more damage. Does weakness damage on debuff targets. Does increase its damage limit like most burst effects do. And then with this burst effect, it does overflow stolen up, HP damage limit up, brave damage, plus 10% per debuff on the target, up to 80% brave damage up, and then HP damage up to 40, right? So that's the really good one that's just, you're going to get 40% more HP damage. Very, very good effect, right? Just pretty crazy. So that's basically Kefka, pretty easy, pretty basic to use. But once again, this is a good just to exemplify the problem of like you don't want to run him with a lot of debuffers, or you want very minimal. You do want to make sure you get up to 8 though, and I don't think Kefka himself can get 8 on. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So Kefka himself does like 6. So if you can bring another character or a combination of characters that's going to get you up to 8, that's probably the best combo. If you bring other characters that don't debuff a lot. But you can see right here, now that the enemies are full of framed debuffs, I can't put my HP silence on. So you got to be careful, and you see I didn't apply anything. There's no room for it. So make sure that you apply the HP silence. So for those of you that are newer to the game that don't understand how this works, debuffs will overwrite each other as long as they're not framed. So if it's not framed and there's no room, it'll just push off the unframed ones and add the new buffs on. But since we have them all framed, they cannot be pushed off. Now the other benefit of Kefka that I should mention, this is a good defense against enemies buffing themselves. The enemies, if they try to buff, there's no room for buffs either. So they can't push your debuffs off. Now a lot of enemies these days, what they do when they do their big things or their thresholds, they'll cleanse themselves first. So Kefka's not really good to use if the enemies cleanse themselves a lot. So you can't defend against that if they say, oh, I'm going to cleanse all these debuffs and then buff after. Then yeah, they're basically pushing it off themselves by cleansing it first. But anyways, guys, there you go. That's Kefka. Pretty easy character to use. The big thing with him, once again, is get some debuffs on right away. But then make sure all of your important debuffs are on and framed before you hit that hyperdrive. So that you can keep the good ones on and let those generic ones kind of be pushed off, right? So let me know what you guys think. Thanks for watching. We'll catch y'all on the next one.